Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to more HR Week 2022. Whatever you were doing, you're back with us now, wherever you are. I'm just imagine, I look through this screen here, through the lens, and I can only imagine where you could be. Maybe remote working, maybe on an island somewhere, perhaps, maybe at home, or maybe at work, or pretending to be at work and actually sneaking off and watching HR Week 2022. No idea. I will never know. I might know if you put it in the chat, but most of the time I will never know. We move on now to our next session, all about organizational design, and I'm going to introduce now the moderator who's going to shape this conversation certainly in the right way, right direction, from Hyperoptic, Ivan Stefanovic. Ivan, are you there?
Yes, Sam. Thanks, Peter, for a great intro. You're a fantastic host as always.
Well, get out of here. Listen, because I saw this. I noticed this.
Oh, yeah.
The last issue, you were the editor of this, right?
Yes.
And it's actually all about, there we are, there we go, right at the front there. Can you see that? Maybe not. There you go. All about organizational design. And again, if you haven't got your copy, if you haven't got your physical copy, don't worry, not a problem at all, because you can download this. If you go to the HR World Hall, I believe, on the platform, you can actually download this edition. And if you're really wild, if you really want to go crazy, you can download all of the editions. If you're that great, you don't have to be crazy to download them. However, if you really want to get absolutely everything, all the editions, you can do that. Listen, Ivan, I know this is going to be an exciting, dynamic session. I'll just leave everything up to you now.
Thanks again, Peter. So, hello, everyone. I'm so delighted to be at the HR Week again, and this time in the role of the Org Design Panel Moderator. We have 3 organization design experts with us, so I expect very interesting content in the next, let's say, 40 minutes or so. So without any further ado, let me briefly introduce our amazing panelists. First and foremost, we have Amy Cates with us. Amy is a leader of Accenture's global practice. She helps CEOs and executive teams building high-performing organizations able to deliver on complex global strategies. Amy has co-authored 5 of the leading books in the field, created the LinkedIn Learning video series on the topic, and teaches at Cornell University. She has a passion for building organization design capability in the HR and OD community and has taught over 4,000 professionals the Cates-Kessler methodology through in-house programs. Great having you with us, Amy.
A pleasure to be here, Ivan.
Thanks. And our next panelist is Elvira Kalmar. Elvira is a seasoned professional with 20 years of experience as an internal and external organization development, organization design, and HR professional. She has chaired the Hungarian OD Association and the European Organization Design Forum. As head of People and Organization Development Unit at Magyar Telekom, she was responsible for Hungary's biggest internal OD team. Together with the Swiss solution Surfers, she has founded the Go Beyond project to equip HR professionals and company leaders with the contemporary tools, skills, and mindset that are needed to lead organizations in becoming more adaptive and flexible. Elvira is a certified organization design professional, and her Native in Change course is one of the 9 internationally accredited organization design courses. And it's always a pleasure having you with us today, Elvira. And finally, we have Mladen Chudanov with us. Mladen is a full professor at the University of Belgrade Faculty of Organizational Sciences, where he acquired his MSc and PhD degree. His teaching experience extends outside of the borders of Serbia to universities in China, Italy, and Slovakia. Mladen has 20 years of consulting experience in large, medium, and small organizations, with a focus on projects related to analysis and design of jobs, organizational structure, processes, and strategy. Throughout his career, he has collaborated in and assessed more than 100 startup projects, published more than 140 research papers, and has more than 1,000 citations. He also serves as the editor and reviewer in several journals. Super excited you are here with us, Mladen, as well. So thank you all for
among you.
Thank you. So thank you all again for joining us today. And let me start with my first question. And I was thinking very extensively on what the first question should be, having in mind that you're all such wonderful experts and we can use your knowledge today. So my first question is about trends and some fresh perspectives when it comes to organization design. Now, we are witnessing massive changes in various areas of life and work globally. And let me say that, first of all, COVID pandemic resulted in rethinking the future of workforce and how to motivate and engage people when they are working in the online mode, right? Then we have war in Ukraine, which is resulting in even greater global recession and gas shortages. On top of that, multiple challenges that led to massive disruption of the global supply chain, and the list goes on, right? So how is organization design evolving over time to respond to these and other challenges? And what do you see as new perspective and approaches? And also with operating model being a hot topic these days, right? And many people not always understanding the difference between operating model and org design, I would like to start with Amy, because I know you guys at Accenture have a very interesting perspective on this topic. So Amy, if you can start with this one.
Thank you, Ivan. And it's great to be here again. I was here at HR Week last year. Great to be back with my Balkan friends and beyond. I was watching the commercial of the Kempinski Hotel in some beautiful islands in Croatia. And I wish I was back there instead of cold New York, where I'm joining you today. So a great question. Look, I've been in this field for 30 years. The world has always been a complex, changing. There's every year feels like this is the year of the most change. I think we have to go back to, some fundamentals, and there's a few trends that I see that are sort of consistent over time. So we've got organizations that are trying to grow. And how do we go from being a single business with a great success formula and move into new geographies or new territories? Just last month, I was working with Netflix. If you're familiar with the streaming industry, that is undergoing tremendous change, consolidation, membership. Netflix becoming a global company. I'm thinking about how do we manage new complexities? So could be new industry, but same old organization issues. Or on the other side, you think about the automotive industry. Last year, we worked extensively with Ford Motor Company and thinking about how do you take an organization perfectly designed to build internal combustion engines and really transform it into electric vehicle fleet management, a data company. That kind of change for what any kind of legacy company that has to change its business model fundamentally when the DNA is so strong is a challenge that is not new, but the context is changing. A lot of companies, the world, 20 years ago, we said the world is flat. There's going to be more global, common products and such, and we see things becoming even more local. China was a big thing, everybody pulling out of China. Where do we go next? How do we deal with supply chains? How do we make sure that we can manage the whole and yet be very, very locally relevant and locally nimble? And I think that is the biggest challenge today, is how can we be big and scaled and fast and agile? So our practice here at Accenture that we've been building is called operating model and organization design. And we think about that very specifically. Operating model being the picture of your organization that you are evolving as you evolve strategy. Strategy continually changes and evolves. We need to be thinking about the organization. So no more reorgs, restructures, redesigns. We have to think about organizing toward a future and being just as adaptable in organization as we are in strategy. And organization design is a very powerful way to think about systems, human behavior at scale, and how do we shape human behavior to work across all kinds of boundaries of time, culture, geography, business model. So we use the J. Galbraith STAR model to think about how do we design organizations to build operating models that can deliver on complex global strategies.
Great. Thank you, Amy, for such a wonderful answer. Elvira, what's your point on this topic?
I can very much join into what Amy was saying. So all in all, somehow it's the same old approach we are using. But on the other hand, what's really, really changing is the context. And maybe with that, I'd like to bring it down a little bit more to the regional context and what I'm experiencing with my clients and through my students' cases also, is that just like Amy said, that strategy is changing a lot more often than we were used to it some 5 or even 10 years ago. And with that, you have to realign everything again in the organization. So the time in organization design, what I'm also experiencing is a lot less about big transformations, big redesigns, but a lot more going into small but continuous evolutions and fine-tuning of knowing, having an agreement of what is the work that needs to be done now. And that's really changing in some of the cases quarterly in organizations, especially if you think about the skyrocketing energy prices or really the war again in Europe. I see with lots of clients, the question is not that much the growth anymore, but the survival. And maybe their business is strong and stable, but maybe their partners are not, or maybe their customers are about to go bankrupt because of what's going on. So there's a lot more alertness to look outwards, continuously scan the environment, and on the other hand, continuously fine-tune and let the company move together with how we kind of fine-tune or aim the design of the organization. And maybe to add to it, another good thing that grew out of COVID is what I'm experiencing is that organization design is not just happening in projects when we invite the consultants or you invite us inside a company, but of course, organization design is continuously happening in every organization, but there is a lot more awareness put into that, which is again super great to see, and which also results something that we notice that it's not event based anymore necessarily, which means that you don't only design or make new agreements about what is the work that needs to be done and how we are going to make that just on workshops. It's happening on meetings inside of organizations. You can involve digital tools to tap into the intelligence of the organization. And the really interesting thing is that it's not anymore just happening top down, driven from the center of the organization, but it's happening continuously at almost every angle, every part of the organization, which of course brings the challenge, how do you harmonize these efforts? And while I think in the past decades, it was more the structure that helped us align these intentions. What we are seeing today, it's more the set of goals, the different levels of the strategic positioning, the strategic plan, and then even, as I said, broken down into quarterly goals. That's where the alignment is happening more and more.
Great, Elvira. And I think this is a wonderful perspective that org design is actually happening continuously rather than sporadically, right? Mladen, any thoughts on this topic on your end?
Thank you very much. Well, I would agree that we have to adapt to the new technology, and this technology now finally opens a space to develop an organization in a full sense of unified integral entity. Because so far, we couldn't create something that has its collective knowledge and soul, heart, and mind with culture to the full extent. And actually, those were just a bunch of people working under the same corporate pyramid and connected by the same structure, directed by the same processes, by the reward systems, to quote a famous star model. And actually, right now we are getting Generation Zs in our ranks, and they are organized from the kindergarten. They start to form specific social network groups. They form their own structures. They form their own reward systems. They come with different expectations into our organization. And I think that for the first time in the history of organizational design, we have the technology to create something which could be an entity in a sense of Peter Senge's fifth discipline, with its own mind, with a mind of its own. And I agree that on operative level, we have to follow new business models, just as every consultant engage on top-notch projects sees that they are changing rapidly. But also, maybe, if I may add something, on a strategic level, to think about the concepts of organizations and about dimensions of coordination, which are completely different now. About dimensions of control, about dimensions of job division, which has reached its breaking point, because we are living in completely different world than 20 years ago. And if I may paste, I found some illustration online about best fold model 20 years ago. And maybe if we could share this link with our participants, I think it's pretty flamboyant illustration of how did the world change, and still we tend to cling to same structures, processes, models, reward systems, etc., etc. But that's my 5 cents.
Thanks, Mladen. So obviously, lots of things are happening around us, right? And having in mind this is the world has accelerated in terms of innovation and fast-paced competition. It feels extremely important for organizations to deliver the best products and services to their customers, right? But at the same time, they still need to cope with challenges of being at the forefront of the productivity curve. So how do we make organizations simultaneously effective and efficient? Because I do believe this is a major task for the majority organizations in various industries at the moment. So maybe to start with this one with Elvira, if you agree.
Thank you very much. And this is one of my favorite topics, actually, because I do work a lot with small and medium-sized organizations as well, not just with big companies. And when we talk about kind of effectiveness and efficiency, I often see that we try to solve this situation from the formal structure of the organization, and we try to focus on one unit and another unit and how we can optimize the work of that unit or their collaboration, how we can evolve, or the cooperation, how we can develop. And in fact, one of the tools that we're quite often using, and I think where org design is actually happening, it's not that much in the power structure, like Mladen was referring to it, but in the value creating structure, in the value creating reality of the organization. So really the magic, or to be kind of concrete, not just theoretical about it, is building together, bringing together people who work around one process within your organization, around one product in the organization. And it doesn't matter if it's, for example, a production company, but to invite people who are touching the production. I don't know if you can still hear me or see me because something happened with the picture.
We can hear you, but the picture will be back.
Super. So when you want to improve efficiency, for example, of a production in a pharmaceutical company, then if you think about in a value creating reality, that means you have to invite into that conversation the procurement, the maintenance people, because often what happens or what doesn't happen is the reason because they're not aligned, their thinking, their actions are not aligned together. But I can also talk about an innovation process in a Swiss luxury goods project. So the idea is once you have everybody in the room, whether it's an online room or a physical room, and to start thinking together with them, how this process, how can we do this better? How would our clients notice that we are doing it better? And how would we, our people, notice that we are doing this work better? the knowledge is always there within the group of the people, those who are touching that process or working on that same product. And actually harvesting this knowledge is something that's not just making the company more effective, but it's also teaching tools, ways of looking at their work. Also, just like Mladen was mentioning, the learning organization, we use a lot the Agile retrospective in these cases to help people to look at their process. What is working well, what is it that they need to change, and make agreements there and then about what they're going to experiment with to make it better. And then have certain fixed sets of time when you come back and revisit your experiment and you draw your learning. And with that, what I'm trying to say is that with very simple tools, like an Agile retrospective, you can bring it into any sort of organization and teach how to continuously evolve the work they are doing. And what we are talking about here is definitely not process development. It's actually really rethinking the work, what needs to be done, and how we are going to do that.
Thanks, Elvira. Mladen, I know when we discussed this topic earlier, right, you mentioned ambidextrous organizations, right? So would you like to elaborate on that, or do you have maybe some other thinking around how to build organizations to be effective and efficient at the same time?
Well, I would continue in the direction that Elvira said. And okay. Actually, I don't believe, and I never seen in any of my consulting experience, which is limited, a company which is effective and efficient at the same place at the same time. Now, it's possible to be ambidextrous, but I don't think that it could be done in the same hour. You have to choose, similar to a car engine design. You will either have a lot of horsepower, or you will have tiny fuel consumption. But you cannot have both at the same time. And for 50 years that theory of ambidexterity has developed, we have advances, mostly illustrated by the examples of Google and 3M, of contextual ambidexterity. And it is related to all dimensions of organization, and those companies are doing it right. They do not have too much focus on structure, too much focus on culture, too much focus on processes, too much focus on strategy, but most focus is on synergized set of all those elements of organization. And for example, 3M lets their own engineers spend 15% of their time without restrictions of administration, bureaucracy. They let them be free for 15% of paid work hours. And Google, in a famous story, which is not completely exact, but in general it's true, lets their employees have 20% of their time to focus on creative, effective projects. And the rest of the time is dedicated to efficiency. So I don't think that you could be, you could develop the structure that lets you be efficient and effective at the same time and to reach a peak of those. But you can have structural ambidexterity. You could have one part of the organization dedicated and designed for effectiveness, and another part dedicated and designed for efficiency. Or you could have contextual or project ambidexterity, which in my opinion is even better, because then you could have employees who would be effective on Wednesday or any day they choose, and efficient for the rest of their work week. But again, every element of the organizations needs to be meticulously designed to the finest detail to achieve that fine tuning. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Mladen. And Amy, I know in your last book you did touch on this topic, right? And I believe it was Square versus the Tower. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? So if you can elaborate on that one, please.
Yeah, so I love the challenge, because all organization challenges are polarities. Can we be both and? It's never either or. Every organization has to be innovative and grow and be efficient, effective at the same time, continually becoming efficient so that it can free up resources, energy to put into the new. It was O'Reilly and Tushman back in 2004 that wrote the famous article on the ambidextrous organization. And the challenge then, and Mladen is absolutely right, can an individual be both at the same time? And usually the efficient always outweighs the innovation part of the work. So yeah, in our most recent book, which is called Networked, Scaled, and Agile, and the whole theme of it is, can you be big and fast at the same time? Is how do you design organizations to really leverage where it makes sense, to scale, to consolidate, to harmonize and standardize, where you can get that efficiency and drive really, really scale out of your assets and resources, and at the same time, be nimble, fast, agile, local, relevant, where it makes sense and where it's differentiating. And that is one of the biggest tensions in all organizations. And I remember one of our clients saying, we are absolutely a hybrid and we have both of that going on, but all in the wrong place. We're trying to scale out in our markets, and our back end is trying to differentiate where it adds no value. So the idea, that's this whole idea, for organizations of scale to be thinking about, of a certain size, to be thinking about front, middle, and back, where the front is facing the customer and has to be either local, if you're in many markets, geographies, or for consumer segments, or for different, if you're B2B, for your verticals. How do we really customer oriented, deliver in a local way, have every customer feel like we are just inventing it for them? How do we have a set of products, services, and experiences that are market leading, where we're innovating, where we're developing, that are differentiated in a different way, so that we're really competing against our competitors with the growth? And then how do we create a back end, which could be our engineers, which could be our operations, our manufacturing, it could be our data, it could be our platforms, whatever makes sense. How do we leverage and all shake hands and say we're all going to be doing this the same way, because local differences aren't going to add any value for our customer. They're just going to create what we call unrewarded complexity. And this is the essence really of design today, is how can we be big and fast? How can we scale and be agile? How can we leverage and really be local at the same time?
Thank you for this answer. So, having in mind this is predominantly an HR conference, I can assume a lot of people in the audience are eager to understand what is it that they can do to support their organizations working more proactively and in a systemic fashion on organization design. So what is the role of HR in organization design now, and how can we prepare HR to assume a bigger role going forward? And Mladen, maybe this one is for you first to answer.
Well, thank you very much. After the COVID pandemics, we had a major challenge for HR, and it's now it's fashionable to call it quiet quitting, but it's an old concept. When people are not satisfied with some aspect of the organization, they start to work through. And I think it's especially important for the new generations. And I believe that organizations cannot beat that on their own, because it's deeper social issue. It starts in our school systems. Students tend to quite quit. We are not leveraging the full potential of students at elementary school. And how can we expect to leverage their full potential when they start their work career after 20 years of working to rule and finding some obstacles which could not be surpassed? And in that direction, I was thinking about gamification of organizational structure, which could make it more interesting and more acceptable to alphas and Gen Zs coming to our workforce, because they will not accept structures and processes designed for different age, for different technology. Arthur Stinchcomb, he wrote that each age impacts a stamp upon our organizational structures, and we could see the ghost of time in each of famous structures developed during some historical period. And I believe that, this gamification article was actually rejected by some academic journals. So it's maybe it's complete nonsense, and maybe it's not the audience of editors is a bit older. But I think that major role of HR is to improve job design as a basic cell of organization. And the part of organizational design and HR where they intersect the most is job design, because most HRs will, open a Word file with job description during a normal workday. And if there is one common document that most HRs will open and use in their daily work related to organizational design, I believe that is a job description. And we should ask ourselves, are our job designed to be fulfilling for the employees? And do we have a formula of Heckman and Oldham which analyzes, is the work meaningful? Do you have some responsibility? Do you know your outcomes? Because new generations will come from the context where they played video games and they had all the feedback so much better than the feedback they will receive in their corporate environment. And their advancement and career and everything will seem so much better in the virtual world. And it's just a matter of time. When will they silently quit? Thank you.
Thanks, Mladen. Amy, what's your advice to our HR audience? How can they drive organization design in their organizations?
Yeah, I think the HR function is so critical to this work. Nobody else in the organization sees all the parts and the way the system is working together, and a greater HR organization is coming together and sharing that information, connecting the dots and looking at what needs to change in the system, what needs to change in all the domains. How do we need to enable leaders? How do we need to coach? How do we need to train? And the workforce, and what Mladen's saying is, how do we need to start thinking about the work people are doing, and particularly how we are working today in our new generations. It's interesting, over the last month or so, I mentioned Netflix. I've sat with the HR teams at Google, at Meta, Atlassian, which are interesting, a trend here of big tech companies. And the new word is productivity, right? We can't just throw money at the problem. We can't just throw people at the problem. We're not growing anymore. It's all about, and all of a sudden, when productivity becomes important, even then organization design, it becomes something of interest. And I like to think about it, and we've been having some interesting conversations, and I think this is relevant because not every HR group can have an org design function, right? But think about it as organization effectiveness. Think about it as organizational health. And I think of this as three different parts. One is really the HR team can play an important role in helping leaders crystallize strategy, not set strategy, not decide strategy, but articulate and crystallize strategy so the right trade-offs can be made, so everybody in the organization understands their purpose. Employees today want to understand why. What are we doing here? Where are we going? What are we trying to achieve? And I think we have a big role in our field to help crystallize that. Then there is something about org design. What is the intent of the organization? How does it fit together, and making that easy to understand? And then the work really of talent and organization development. How do we bring to life ways of work, help people collaborate, work across boundaries? I sat with an executive team just last week. I was out in Chicago, global organization, and one of the leaders said, you know, I just want to have good days at work. I want to go home and say, today I made progress. I contributed. It was easy. I made the decisions I need to make. And everybody wants to feel that way. And I think we have such a big role, whether we're external consultants, internal consultants, HR business partners, to create healthy organizations and systems where people can really bring their talents and feel good at the end of the day.
Thanks, Amy. I think this is a wonderful piece of advice for our HR friends here. Elvira, what's your take on this topic?
I mean, connecting to Amy, maybe to highlight the point that organization design doesn't have to be a function in a company. It's a competency or a role. And who else is more prepared actually to fulfill it than HR, who sees all parts of the organization and is there to support it? I mean, my point that I would like to make is that lead the way. Be the change you want to be and you want to see. I mean, this is what I can share with you from my own experience. I was hired to lead a team of change managers. So our job was actually really to project manage that the job descriptions are prepared on time whenever there was a big restructuring in the organization. And you can accept that as it is, or you can start working on and what else can we do and how else can we support the organization. And it's possible because in 3.5 years, we also managed to first just start facilitating smaller events, smaller group works where they could rethink themselves. And then slowly with that, I could build the competency of my team also to become confident in it. So later on, we became the people who actually initiated processes. We suggested to invite professionals from outside, what type of consultants we need. So this is really a competency and the capacity HR has to have and has to develop. And just kind of one last point maybe to make. I think quite often it's actually us, and being on HR, I can say in our own name, it's our systems, the HR systems that are hindering in the way of change or evolution of the company. And the reason for that is that we focus everything, again, on the formal structure. Every system HR builds is focused on that. And the only tiny little shift that we could do and think about our systems, how they would address the value-creating reality of the organization, because with that, you shine a light on a reality that's there in every organization, that's flexible, that's pulsating, that's changing. And actually, without big transformations, you could help the organization to realize its continuous evolution. For that, I think we need to run ahead. We need to have the experiences, our own experiments, our own failures, so that we can help others go through that as well.
Thanks, Elvira. And time does fly when you have such a wonderful group of experts. Thank you guys for the contribution you made to this session. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so thank you once again very much. Peter,
Wonderful.
over to you.
Thank you so much. Again, fantastic. Another session, which, I mean, we've been doing this all day, sessions where we can just keep on listening and nodding, agreeing, curiosity, conversations really going forward. So thank you so much.